Marvel Rivals did an amazing job capturing the fast-paced and flamboyant lifestyle of Johnny Storm, and then they turned that into a unique playstyle for the Human Torch character that is fun and dynamic. This guy is constantly doing something, whether it's controlling space with his flame fields, dive bombing someone out of the sky, or shotgunning down a tank. But I feel like a lot of players are missing how some of the mechanics work on Torch, and I wanted to make this video to help them out and clarify a few things. Let's start with the basics. Torch is a mid-range character that can quickly become close range with insane burst potential. I'm seeing a lot of players flying way up high and spamming his attacks from a distance, and it really isn't doing much. Are you being annoying? Yeah, sure, but you're not being effective. Torch's basic attack is basically a shotgun, so it does a lot more damage up close. His damage starts to fall off significantly beyond 15 meters, and I try to keep myself within 25 meters at most times. It's okay and it's expected if you fly up for a bit to get an overview of the battlefield or to set up a bigger pyro prison, but sitting too far up or too far back from the fight just cuts your damage down significantly. Your basic attack is extremely powerful, like 2-shot powerful against some characters. Don't be afraid to apply big pressure to a diving tank or anyone that gets up in your face. Your basic attack combined with a quick flaming meteor blazing blast combo can KO tanks in no time. Keep in mind, Torch's basic attack seems to be kind of buggy and glitchy. It has a weird animation and projectile speed that makes it miss when it seems like it should hit. I doubt this is intended, it simply kind of looks bad, but perhaps it will be changed one day and they'll fix it. Okay, so we've established that you need to be closer to the fight to actually contribute damage. That part is obvious, but of course not too close to the fight. So finding that balance and positioning is one of Torch's goals. Now, a byproduct of sitting in that 10 to 25 meter range is receiving heals more often, but you may get hit more often as well. Pay attention to what ultimates the enemies have available. Like, if you don't get too close to the ground, then the Thing can't hit you with his ult, or Groot's ult, or Venom. There's many examples of this, but the main point is that your spacing and positioning is key. Stay close, but not too close. Pretend you're a storm trying to give your aura to your team. This lets you still get a good view of things, but also lets you set up flame fields and dive bombs for maximum damage. Carrying on with positioning leads us to Human Torch's F ability, his Flaming Meteor. People misunderstand how this works. Yes, you go flying out of the air and slam the ground, but this ability also detonates any flame fields you have already burning on the ground near the spot that you impact. Every flame field that explodes deals 55 damage in an AoE radius around it. You can stack these up and detonate some big bombs to unsuspecting targets. Yet again, this is a lesson in positioning and situational awareness. This ability combo is kinda nuts. You can practically instantly kill any 250 HP hero with 2 right clicks and your F. And your Flaming Meteor also knocks back enemies if they survive the impact, so you can utilize this to push people out of a Loki Lantern field, or an Invisible Woman's ult, or even off a cliff to their death. This dive skill is so flexible. Use it to get back into a fight quickly after respawning, or to dive down to cover if you take a bunch of enemy fire. I've even stacked flame fields on the ground when an enemy Iron Fist jumps on me, then just flown up slightly and dove right back into the ground to instantly KO him. But to keep it simple, sometimes you want to set up some bombs and detonate them with Flaming Meteor, or sometimes you just use Meteor to get out of trouble. It all depends on where you're fighting and against who. And sometimes you want to make a pyro prison. Arguably one of the most interesting skills in the game, pyro prison is a lot of fun to use. It is so much more than just making fun little shapes on the ground. Making a proper prison at the right time can be difficult, but so satisfying when you pull it off. And it might seem a little janky with how it works, but here's a few tips. So first of all, the prison has to completely line up and connect in order for it to burn enemies inside of it for 50 HP per second. If a single speck of terrain, or a door, or a Groot wall, or something is blocking the walls of fire from connecting, the entire prison fails. The firewalls themselves will still do 65 damage to anyone that crosses over them, but enemies will not take any damage over time inside of the walls. The walls can only be a maximum of 40 meters in length, which is rarely ever an issue, but I mean, that's a pretty damn big prison, but just keep that in mind. On some of the payload maps, for example, there's some wide open spaces. So if you make it any longer, any bigger than 40 meters, it will not work. And controlling space in Marvel Rivals is a rare but valuable resource, so try and take advantage of this skill, especially in choke points. Figuring out when and where to make these prisons is all a big part of the complexity of the Human Torch character. A nice big square in the middle of a contested control point is amazing. It does a ton of damage and generates a lot of ultimate charge. But it isn't always easy to find the space or the formation or the time to make a proper prison. Sometimes you'll make triangles instead of squares. Sometimes you'll just make a wall across a choke point. Sometimes you just plant some bombs in the middle and dive bomb someone for an instant KO. The point is, this skill is flexible, but it will take time for you to develop it. You will learn certain spots on certain maps that are easy to make powerful and effective prisons, and other spots there's just no point. And I'll be honest, the placement of your flame fields can be quite unreliable at times. If you hit the edge of a wall or a lip on the terrain, sometimes it just won't place a flame field down. Or if you hit an enemy shield, or even a jumping enemy can sometimes stop a flame field from being created on the ground beneath them. Get used to making some really shitty shapes on the ground. You thought it was going to be a square and it turned into a tiny triangle or something instead. But that's what makes it fun. It's definitely a high skill capability, and each new map that comes out, it just kind of brings all these new exciting possibilities for how we can use Pyro Prison. The last thing I want to touch on is Torch's ultimate ability, Supernova. By now, you've probably seen a Storm team up with Supernova and clean out an entire team. But for this video, I just want to focus on solo ulting with Torch. Supernova is a weird skill, and its purpose is sort of undefined. I want to point out something that most do not realize. It actually provides you with a 30% damage reduction during its 8-second duration. Also, when you activate it, it does 70 damage to all targets around you instantly. So with those two facts in mind, it feels like you want to dive in with your F and then pop your ultimate and start firing away, which is what I've been trying to do. Sometimes I just crack it and start firing off some tornadoes to block a choke point. The tornadoes sort of suck though. Like, to be honest, they aren't very good. You can only have 4 out at a time, and their damage is quite slow. Usually I fire off a few and then basic attack anyone nearby, and then I fire off a few more before my ultimate expires. But chasing people around with the nados just doesn't seem very effective. Covering a contested payload or a capture point, of course that makes more sense and it makes it more effective. But yeah, any other situation, I just fire off a few and then throw in some basic shotgun attacks and fire off a few more before the ultimate ends. They do stick around for a few more seconds after Supernova finishes. I have no complaints about Supernova. I think Torch has a lot of power packed into his kit, and I think the ultimate is really cool. Just don't expect to make any humongous plays with Supernova alone. Last thing to touch on is matchups and what to kind of look out for when it comes to team compositions. Of course, the team up with Storm is very strong and can lead to your team having multiple flying characters at once, but this usually results in the enemy team picking some sort of hit scan counter like Hela or Punisher to harass you. There is no particular strategy to really use against this, of course, but I will use my flame fields at range to harass whoever is harassing me, since those have no damage fall off whatsoever. I don't have any footage of it, but people will sometimes swap to Scarlet Witch and try to take you down that way. Compared to some matchups, this isn't too hard for Torch to deal with, as a couple body shots from your basic attack can sometimes just scare her off immediately. I've also started to drag the Wanda up in the air with me, so she uses her projection to chase me, and then I meteor myself back to the ground to get away from her. Now I can turn around and shoot at her from range, and she has no invulnerability charges left to use. It's not the most effective counter, but it seems to work out okay in most situations. So, to wrap the video up, let's just summarize. Try playing a bit closer to the fight, pay attention to your flame fields, and see if you can dive in and detonate them for some instant kills. Utilize your pyro prisons, but only in places that make sense. Don't waste a bunch of time trying to set up a nice square prison and then ignite it when no one is inside. Do it fast in choke points and contested places, and otherwise don't sweat it too much. It is a skill that will take time to develop. The Human Torch is fun and flexible and can quickly change the dynamic of a fight. I'm excited to keep playing him and improve, and I'm really curious to see where he fits in the high-end meta of Marvel Rivals. I want to thank you all for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think about Human Torch so far, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.